All right, so everybody, I want to thank everyone for coming in tonight to see our presentation. We have terrific presenters. Let me thank our sponsors, which is Photo Shelter, Pro Photo Daily, Epson Printer, Archive Magazine, AIAP, American Photography. Thank you guys always for your endearing support. Also, everyone, if you could subscribe to Projections NYC on YouTube, that would be terrific. We could always use that. We have two terrific presenters tonight. Just to let you know, Alec Vigneault could not make it, so we only have the two terrific presenters on tonight, and who wanted Alec to be here anyway, so we were not even going to miss him. Dear friend. So we have Bruce Byers, and we start off with an old dear friend from forever ago, actually, competitor, and only did excellent work that we lost too many jobs to. Now that I think back on it, Beth, but we have Beth Galton. So Beth, the floor is yours.
Okay. I want to first thank you for asking me to speak. This is really a privilege, and thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Share. And right. Okay. So I want to just start by giving you a little background. I live in New York City, and I've been a commercial photographer shooting food and still life for over 35 years. And I first fell in love with fine art photography in college and have continued working on my own personal projects as well as doing commercial work. What I'm going to show you tonight is a personal project that I've been working on during the pandemic. Beginning of March 2020, I had a few commercial jobs booked in at the end of the month. COVID was in the US, but not in New York. As my shoot dates came closer, I started obsessively watching the news. The anxiety of what might happen started to gain momentum. And 3 days before we were scheduled to start shooting, the city closed down and New York became the epicenter of the pandemic. I quickly went to my studio and retrieved my camera and a few stands so I could take photographs at home if I wanted to. And like everyone, I was stuck in my apartment, glued to my computer, reading the news, looking for something positive to focus on. And what I found were these endless analytical maps and charts showing how COVID was moving across the country. They seemed important, so I began to screen grab them, not knowing what I would do with them, but I just thought I need them. And and after a while of collecting and seeing how COVID was infecting our world, it dawned on me that these visual changes were not just red and yellow lines, but showed where millions of people were being affected. And what these charts and maps left out was the immensity of the emotional toll of those touched by the pandemic. It became apparent to me that I had to use these in my photographs to help me process this devastating experience. We all had to find a new way to put some order into our world, and shooting these images became my way of coping. I began shooting these photographs the beginning of April 2020 and spent the next year and a half exploring the subject and my feelings around COVID. So I took a corner of my apartment next to south-facing windows to create my own little studio. It took me back to basics and reminded me how little I actually need to take a photograph. And necessity is the mother of invention. So as you can see, my cooler became my computer stand. And because my tripod didn't go high enough, I used my side tables, which happened to all be the same height, so I could get up high enough.
Yeah, Beth, can you hit your full screen?
I did. You know that? It's not showing its full screen?
I don't think so, right, Jay? Or is it?
No, it's not. You can try hitting Cloverleaf L. It should full screen.
Is that no?
There you go.
No, not full screen.
That's full screen or not?
No,
full screen?
I can see the edges of your PDF reader. So go to View and then full screen, or you can hit Cloverleaf L.
Do you see it now?
We see it. It's just not full screen.
Okay, because I've been doing it on my screen. It looks full.
Huh. Okay.
It's not full. It's not full.
No, I see all the, the trims, the zoom and everything.
Huh. It's so weird. Uh,
Can you hit cloverleaf L?
yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, okay. Then you're fine, Beth.
Okay.
Try unsharing and then share again.
Okay,
That might
let me
clear
do
it.
that. I bet that's gonna fix it. And how's that?
Same.
Same?
All right,
Okay,
so go with it, Beth. It's fine.
okay, let me try one more thing. I know what I did. So I start, okay, so now I'm gonna share, and if this doesn't work, I'll keep going.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, I know what I
Beautiful.
did. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I started printing out these screen grabs, and I first started on copy paper and decided to incorporate tulips that were past their prime that had been delivered with my fresh direct order. Botanicals have always played a really important role in my photographs, and I thought by using them in this photograph, it would begin to speak to the humanity of those who were affected by COVID. I wasn't quite happy with the paper and wanted a more ethereal feel, and ordered sheets of glassine paper from Staples or online. And so whoops, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm getting out of sync here. So, okay. I started printing on this glassine paper, which had more of a translucent feel to it. So I stuck this in a patch of sunlight and used a really slow shutter speed so that I could capture the petals in motion, trying to highlight the chaotic nature of our world at the moment. And then working in Photoshop, I began to combine these headlines and maps, focusing on what was happening that day, and began to print them out. And most of the time I would manipulate them so they would become more than just a chart. And then on top of that, I would spray them with water to distress them and soften the paper. So after I did a series straight down of the paper, I decided that I wanted to look at the subject in a different way and started suspending the paper against white. And what I would do is I'd shoot a couple of images, process them, layer them. If I didn't like what I saw, then I would repeat this process until I created an image that I was happy with the results. And as much as I liked the ethereal feeling of the white, I thought I had to try a black background. And over time, I came to realize that this was the approach that conveyed much of what I was feeling about the pandemic. I ended up shooting more photographs than I care to admit and decided I needed to edit them down and figured out how to best look at this entire project. So in January of 2021, I signed up for a workshop with Michael Foley, his ex-lab, and it was through this monthly class that this series evolved. One of the most important things that I realized through our critiques was that what I was trying to convey about COVID was not clear enough for people to understand. So with a lot of resistance, I finally sat down and wrote captions for each of the photographs to describe simply what they were about. And then, so this is what, at the end of our workshop, we had a show at Michael Foley's gallery, and this was one of the images that hung, and I printed the copy next to the photograph. And it was there that I met Frank, finally. After hearing your name for so many years, we were reunited. So through this process, I came to realize that what I had created was a visual diary of the pandemic. And by the end of this workshop, I decided that the best way to organize it was as a book. I contacted a friend who was a very talented designer and to see if she would work on the book with me. And she agreed to do it.
Beth, just let me ask you, how did the process of starting now to write, affect you, writing captions for the images, something you had never done before? Can you speak to that challenge?
Sure. What I did was, I had to kind of go back and pull the images up, and I dragged all the sheets of paper that I had, because I've saved everything. And I kind of looked at them and thought about what I was feeling when I took that photograph, and then put down all my ideas. And then it was kind of a mess. And I was really lucky. And my 23-year-old niece, who's a writer and a comedian, moved to New York and was living with me. And I said, can you help me edit these? And the two of us sat down and spent a couple of days and edited them. So, and by the time we were done, it was like, oh, I can see how I can do this now, and it really kind of made them much stronger and much more interesting.
Right.
She said the most amazing thing to me. She said, you've written it in 3 different ways. You've written it personally, objectively, and scientifically, and we have to pick one direction to go in. And that really kind of helped refocus me. Okay. Now I lost my place on my notes. So the one thing that when I was having a hard time writing, at first I thought, why don't I take photographs that can go with the COVID pictures? And I did a series of photographs of shadows in my studio, and then put little bits in it. And they never worked. Everybody rejected them. And then but when I started working with Sally, my designer, I sent them to her to see if she could use them in any way. And she fell in love with them and thought, these are great. And by using them, what we've done is we've kind of put them throughout the book. It gives you a sense of time passing, and really, because the shadows keep moving, and it tells you that time is passing, and this is my pandemic story. So just as I explained where I was watching the pandemic, I want this book to also kind of have the beginning of it explain what has transpired. So we started with February 29, 2020, Washington State declares emergency. First death attributed to COVID-19 in Seattle area. And then March 12th, 2020, the US to suspend most travel from Europe as world scrambles to fight pandemic, quoted from the New York Times. And then in March 20th, 2020, the New York State Governor's Office issued an executive order closing non-essential businesses. So this is kind of the basic layout, where we have an image and the shadow picture. And every picture is dated, and then it has a title. So this photograph was shot April 8th, 2020, and it's called The Economics of Safety. I'm encouraging New Yorkers to go on with their lives and get out on the town. Mayor de Blasio. What I also wanted to do is I put a lot of motion into these photographs. I wanted to kind of create this kind of chaotic sense that we were all living with, that we were stuck in our homes, and yet the world was kind of spinning out of control around us. This one is May 9th, 2020, called Current Headlines. Health experts overwhelmed, outbreaks surge, numbers spike, rare syndromes. So this was one where I took headlines and created a piece of paper, on vellum for me to photograph. And then we weren't even, at this point, we were still hiding in our apartments and not going out. So I went on the roof of my building where there was a bush that was dead, and I broke twigs off of it and brought it down to my little studio in my apartment. June 14th, 2020, COVID symptoms. As of now, it affects the brain, eyes, nose, blood. How the virus won. The big cities are exploding. So this was part of what we all sat at our computers ordering things to our homes because we couldn't go out and buy anything. And I went online to Amazon and I decided I wanted a little turntable. And I ordered this little turntable and then I set my set on top of it and I would turn it slowly as I was doing timed exposures. And I would sometimes shoot static pictures, sometimes moving pictures, and then I would combine them in Photoshop. July 8th, false hopes. Cases continue to surge. We were told the virus would be short-lived, but it continues to ravage our city without an end in sight. August 13th, 2020. Realism. Whether you believe or not, the consequences are the same. September 20th, 2020, tracking the spread. Over state lines, from family member to family member. October 14th, 2020, where the virus was. After a summer of some respite, it is building again.
So Beth, at this point, we're using the turntable all the time.
I was using it a lot. The last one was, and then, but then I keep changing. So I kind of, I kept looking at the charts and maps and they began to be somewhat similar. And then what caught my eye was the images of people that had died from COVID. And the news media were doing these grids. And I thought, these are super interesting. Why don't I start printing those out? So that's what this photograph is about. It's about lives lost. And it's US 25,000, the world 1.5 million dead. So this, this was hung rather than on the turntable. And then I would move the papers. And I eventually, I had strings and wires and all sorts of things in there and eventually decided that I didn't like them and retouched them out. November 23rd, 2020, death ripples. A mirage of faces, families in mourning. December 1, 2020, on his watch. All preventable had it not been politicized. December 4th, 2020, is lockdowns, cases, deaths. Cases exponentially grow. So these were suspended on wire. I decided I wanted to kind of see if I could animate them on wire. And then I shot the shadow pictures with shadows of wire so they could be married together. January 7th, 2021, the wait. Healthcare workers, nursing home residents, over 75, essential workers, politicians. January 9th, 2021, vaccine versus COVID proteins. And these are all the names of different kinds of vaccines. They're scientific names. The mRNA vaccine, which we know. The next one is the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. The next one's AstraZeneca. And the last one's the Sinopharm. I had bought these lychee nuts, which I had, kind of let dry in my home. And I began to realize that they look like the COVID cell, the COVID drawings. And they became really a big tool in my photographs to try and convey COVID. January 15th, 2021. Vaccine myths. Rushed and unsafe. Change your DNA. Leave a microchip. Cause infertility. January 19th, 2021. Uneven distribution. As the needle went in, the guilt began. Now protected while so many are not. Slow rollout. February 2nd, 2021. More knowledge, less fear. New discoveries bring hope. February 14th, 2021. Those we've lost. State administrator, Wonderama host, nightclub owner, school teacher, NBA reporter, tango star, Navy vet, Latino judge, photographer, Asian American wife. So I don't know
Beth,
what.
Yeah, so as you're going through this, you're very much being in touch with the news, right? With what the media is saying. So how do you filter out the political side of it? Because which is really wonderful here, because you're just doing the headlines, which is perfect, and you're not getting involved in the left and the right.
Well, I
mean-
start to.
Okay.
Start to, in terms of the pandemic. I think there was one back, wasn't there? Let's see if I go back. If I'm remembering correctly. This one on the left, December 1st, on his watch. All
On the watch,
preventable
right.
had it not been politicized. And that's actually a picture that I took of Trump that I inverted and printed out. And then that's a photograph of all the people who have passed from COVID.
Okay.
And then items that I had kind of collected over a period of time.
So is that a clear decision while you're doing this, not to go too far in the political space as you were starting this, or that just evolved for you?
It just evolved. And then further in, it starts to come more.
Okay.
So I think because I was in such shock.
Oh,
And in a way, it was so painful what was happening in our government in terms about COVID. I felt like I was grappling with it personally for myself more than anything in the beginning. Especially because we were in New York, and every, I remember talking to an insurance agent, because I was trying to make a claim, and he's like, "I'm in Illinois. I don't understand why I have to be shut down." And I said, "You have no idea what's coming." It's like, "Oh no, we'll be fine." And whereas New York, we were so isolated, so I was more focused on New York for a while.
right. Okay.
So, and this one, those who've lost, that was, New York Times had this rolling screen where they would just list people who had died and their pictures. And so I started screen grabbing people off of that and kind of, again, creating these documents. March 10th, 2021, what separates us now? Hard to recognize a face or engage without a smile. So at this stage, then I kind of gave up with layering photographs and just started working with pure motion in the suspended pieces of paper. So I would shoot these multiple times until I kind of got everything in the place that I thought looked interesting. March 20th, 2021. He never wore protection. The death toll is what it is. President Trump. See, here's my political statement.
There you go.
March 23rd, 2021. Family on hold. No touching, no hugging, no visits. April 12th, 2021, the beginning of the end. Each day, shots go into arms. And then April 18th is what to believe. Your area is at a very high risk level. Indoor restaurants are now open. Remember when we had no idea what to believe. Life with Protection, April 20th, 2021. Fog glasses and dry hands, yearning to smell spring. Senseless deaths. If only we had embraced masks as a country. June 2nd, 2021. Conflicting guidance. Masks. You know what? I think it skipped one. There, it did. May 13th, 2021. The slow recovery. We have all longed for this moment. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky. June 2nd, 2021, conflicting guidance. Masks, no masks. Masks, no masks. July 27th, 2021, anger. Rights and liberties of the vaccinated, rights and liberties of the unvaccinated. July 29th, 2021, fear grows. New variants emerge. August 1st, 2021, the repetitive nature of COVID, anxiety, isolation, sickness, death. August 19th, 2021, separate truths. Pfizer vaccine approved, ICUs filling up. September 1st, 2021, the different reality of statehoods, a pandemic of the unvaccinated, President Biden. September 13th, 2021, new normal, apps, cards, mandates. And then this is the artist statement that will be in the back of the book. You know, and now that I see these all put together in this form, they created this visual diary for me, and they're really a reflection of the politics of the time and the way it has affected our everyday lives. And that's it.
Wow. Wow. So as you were going on with this, Beth, did the writing become easier for you, or it became clearer for you? How did that work for you?
It became clearer, so that what I shot up through April, and it was, I think, yeah, April, because I had this presentation I had to do so for this class. So that writing was extremely difficult to do, but by the end of it, it was getting a little better. And then I continued shooting, and when I circled back to do the later ones, it was easier to write because we kind of established a way of speaking in the in the writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, for you personally, being a commercial photographer for so many years, to take on such an editorial project, was that was it easy, difficult, emancipating, to have really, like, you're directing everything as it relates to this, and it's coming from your heart and your soul? How was that for you?
It was well, and I have to step back a bit, because in 2000s, I always took pictures for myself. And then I would photograph them, I would print them, and they go into boxes and nobody ever saw them. And then in 2016, I did a workshop in France, and I brought everything, and they helped me kind of put it together. And by that experience, I thought, okay, now I understand what I need to do. And then after that happened, both my parents passed away 3 days apart in different states and different countries, and I inherited my mother's home, and I knew that she had a lot of stuff, but I had no idea that she was such a hoarder. And she had things from my past, she and my dad had been divorced for 50 years, and she had all this stuff with my father and things I didn't even know. So I took all of this, and I spent a couple of years doing a series called Memory of Absence. So I say this because that was kind of my real entree to not working with anybody and just doing my own thing. I think what was exciting for me with this series was that everything was so out of focus. Coming from the still life food world where everything had to be sharp and you need the center focus and all that stuff. It was very freeing to express my feelings through an image that's in motion. And I think that was a big change for me. And now I'm back taking pictures that are in focus again, but it was a very freeing experience.
And can you speak to some, Robin put in a question, speak more about your shooting process?
Sure. Are there certain images? Because they're different images. Some of the images were, something like this was a piece of paper with the stick stuck through it that I suspended against a black background. And I, in front of a window, daylight. And then I would make it move and do timed exposures. And I just kept doing it until I found the image that I really liked. So I might take 40 pictures, or like the one with Trump's picture in it that I took 3. It just depends. And then something like this is multiple, I kind of laid the piece of paper down on the black surface and was looking down on it. And I shot it static, and then I just kind of moved the surface back and forth, which kind of created this effect. And then I would layer it in Photoshop until it looked interesting to me and try and convey the feeling that I was looking for. Let's see.
One thing, we spoke about that before, what led you to take these workshops? Here's a seasoned veteran, it all, you've done it all, right? I mean, can you, to inspire the rest of us that we're never too seasoned to learn, to be inspired. These workshops that you've taken over the years, and I assume you'll take more. What was the value to that as it relates to this project?
I think, I don't know about other people, but for me, there are two things. When you do a commercial job, you have a layout and you have a place that you're aiming towards. You know that you have to create a photograph that's going to sell a product. So that I learned, I had down. I felt really confident doing that. What I didn't feel confident was doing things purely for myself and having it hold together as a body of work. Because when you do a commercial job, it's like 1, 2, 3 photographs, and then you're on to the next thing. So I kind of had to learn how to work through a project, because I never, other than doing a cookbook, I had never really taken a project for myself and done a body of work. And the workshops were really helpful at helping me put them together to figure out what I was trying to say and how focused I would need to be. And the thing is, like with this experience with the COVID diary as well as with the memory of absence. I remember taking the memory of absence back to France, and I showed it to the mentors there, and nobody got it. And I had a portfolio review a couple months later, and I thought, I got to make this into something. And I went back in my studio and I spent a month and a half trying many different things until I figured out how to make it work. And I feel like this is the same thing. Like the workshops kind of show you what's working, what isn't working, because I don't know about you, but it's very hard to be objective about my own work. And then I could take that feedback and say, oh, that's not working. How can I make this work? How can I make it clear that this is what I want to say?
And
That's
I mean, and so this personal work, how does that affect moving forward your commercial work?
When I started, when I first started, I did these photographs of dried flowers. I
remember that.
And it was on some leaves, and I mailed it out, and I started getting work. And what the pandemic has kind of allowed me to do is almost take a break and go back to what I love doing, which is taking photographs. And, instead of what, I was so obsessed with, okay, I need a new egg photograph, I need a new meat photograph. And to me, they start to look all the same. And I thought, I just need to take pictures of what I want to take pictures of, and that will bring the work, because it always has. So that's what I did. That's how I look at it.
So that's the old lesson comes back again, right? Shoot what you like, and people will love that, and you'll get work from that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've said that forever.
Forever. And I've been doing this forever. And, I go back to some of my original ideas. Like now I've been shooting dried flowers again, because I want to see how I think about them and how I look at them and how I can make them into something different than what I've done before. And I'm never bored. I mean, I love doing it. It's, a passion of mine.
Never worked a day in your life, right, Beth?
No, there were days. There were definitely days.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
Beth, I can't tell you. So how can people get the book?
They can email me off my website. We're in the process of getting it done. It's not quite up on my website yet, but you can go to my website and email me, and I'm making a list, and I will put as soon as we have this done, I'm going to put a book up on the website for people to see.
And if you could just put your email and your website in the chat room.
Yep.
That would be great. So everyone could get it there.
Okay.
Beth, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this for us tonight. It was really terrific. It's a long time coming for you to be here.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. Really a pleasure.
So everyone, let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll have Mr. Byers coming up in say 2 minutes. Beth, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, William. Hi, Robert.
Hey Bruce, this is embarrassing. It just got pointed out by my friend that I'm the only person on the planet that calls it the cloverleaf key instead of the command key.
You are. I
just got asked. She goes, where do you see a clover leaf? That doesn't look like a clover leaf to me. And I'm like, going like, now I'm questioning myself. Where did I get the name clover leaf?
What do you say,
It's not a
Stefan?
clover.
I always called it the
Yeah,
apple key.
Frank.
Yeah, the Apple key. In the old days, it was an apple on the keyboard.
Yeah.
If you had a
I
Mac.
called it the clover leaf key for years, and apparently it's called the command key. Isn't that funny?
I just copied what you said, Jay. Now, we all look.
No, apparently, Frank, it's called the command key. It was just pointed out to me.
I knew that it was. I just thought that was like a new hip term, like dope and most dope and all these other terminology that, I didn't want to feel dated.
Well, I got questions. He goes, where do you see clover leaf? And I'm like looking at it. It's like, you got a point. That's not a clover leaf.
No, it's not.
So I don't know where I got that from.
So this is an invitation in public for Stefan. Stefan, we need you to come on in the coming weeks and months to showcase your new book.
I love to.
Yeah, we will. I'll speak to you offline, and we'll get you on because that work is great.
I would love to. Don't have to ask twice.
No, that's fine. Okay. Without further ado, we have Mr. Byers, who has a number of books, and take it away, Bruce.
All right, here we go. We can get this thing going here. All right, thank you, Frank, for bringing me on here once again. It's great to know you for so many years, and projections has been one of those things, especially when we're able to be in a bar or whatever and have that video room where we all sat around and we could actually talk to each other and clap and do all that. Was really great. So we'll get back to that. I have been a photographer for many years, and it's one of my favorite photographs I took when I was 14, because my mother actually allowed me to take her Rolleiflex, which was I can't do that, but I did. Moments in time, if I knew Cartier-Bresson back in the early 70s, I'd probably be in Paris right now, because I have been literally chasing the decisive moment for many years. And so
I'll take care of it.
thank you for inviting me, Frank. And I want to definitely thank the companies that have supported you for so long, and other photographers. And I've know all these from years of actually buying their equipment or working with them, reading the magazine. And it's just a magnificent way to support artists, to be able to showcase their work. And my work has taken me around the world, and certain places. I have my armed guards, and he happens to be standing in front of a ad for a grocery store. So it's a great background. So my mother shot with a Brownie camera as a kid back in the 30s, and she always carried a Rolleiflex since the 50s. My father shot with a Minox and carried a 16mm film camera. And I'm glad they did, because they were actually my first inspiration. They gave me my first camera when I was 8 years old. It's been endless rolls of film, hundreds and hundreds of airplane flights, and I am in desperate need of a bigger hard drive. So when I travel, I try to make sure that I have my my car rental right, or wherever, but sometimes it gets off a little bit, and in this case I ended up walking. But just one of the best things of photography is I couldn't be a stand-up comedian, so I love to be able to photograph stuff that just makes me laugh every time I see it. It's just amazing. And also that whole that whole idea of, the best photographed is behind you, or hurry up and wait, and it'll happen again, as in this bus would come by. This is in Bangladesh, and I had just come out of a OR, and the bus came by, and I think someone needs to be muted there. And so I figured that if I just wait a moment, another bus will come by, and sure enough, it did. So this is kind of the way I traveled, and Frank was just talking about, is this our job? Well, I was on a job in Bangladesh to follow a bunch of doctors, and if it hadn't been for the desire to get outside that hospital and go walk down the streets, I never would have run into this shot. So while I work, I always have my own creativity with me all the time, because that's the only way it inspires me, and it just keeps me going. So I consider myself a documentary environmental portrait storyteller, and it's my job to make sure that my photographs tell the story of what I've seen. This photograph is another one of my favorites in the West Bank, and I just look at it. The woman with a full burqa and her Down syndrome child, and just to think of the two of them looking at each other, wondering what in the world is going on. The kid can't see his mother, but the mother is sitting there trying to figure out, how to deal with her child in a country that is so third world that there's no real internet to explain what's going on. Again, moments, seeing into, waiting for it, just being there has been my life. I always love how I grew up with the subways of New York being painted, and I was photographing this train, and the train starts moving away, and I was still photographing, and she just leans forward to kiss the guy, and the train literally 1 second later was gone out of my frame. And it's just keeping my eyes open. I always believe in seeing with my eyes and capturing with my camera. So hopefully my Xerox machine that I put up to my eye is there in time. And in this case, I feel that it was. Again, sitting on the back of a moped in Cambodia, driving along, bouncing along the road. I kept tapping the guy on the shoulder. I said, "You're supposed to take me to the rice fields. Where are the rice fields?" He says, wait. We come around the corner and you think that Spielberg was shooting a movie. It was like, ancient wagons and in the middle of nowhere, no tractors, no nothing, but these guys were cutting wheat as if they had machinery. It was just absolutely amazing. And one of the places I love is Cuba, and just being able to create down there is just endless. In about 5 years ago, I went off to Pakistan with a friend of mine, and again, the moments in time over there, I thought everything was going to be different. I thought I'd have to watch out for myself. The people were absolutely amazing and wonderful and very open. I had a hard time getting them out of my photograph. And so it just opened up another world. But again, as a photographer of many years doing travel, you have to be very street smart. We got into a place where they were making bricks, and I'm photographing, and all of a sudden I see my friend walk over to the guy who had given us permission And then they start pointing at me, and I realized that it was time to leave. And I finished photographing what I was photographing, and I walked by my friend and said, "Hey, let's go." And we took off. So street march is very, very important for myself. But then, of course, we had to stop, even though we kicked out of one, not kicked out, but got out of one place. Then 10 miles down the road, we get into another. I always got hard time for photographing the women of Pakistan, but I felt that in this situation, it was just an image, a shape within another color. And I didn't get too much trouble for it, but I just had to photograph it. Been to Bangladesh an awful lot with medical missions, and again going out into the town and cities that are nearby. This was like Grand Central Terminal for Bangladesh, and literally they were just going across the river and back. Incredible chaos, but incredibly well organized. Wanting to do things, wanted to get on the ships across, you had to get on one of these little taxis, and it just a matter of just standing there and hoping that something happens to allow you to do what you wanted to do. Camels at the end of the day. So if people know me and know my work, Street Moments is one of my biggest passions, and the passion since the late 60s. And I shoot with an M6, a Leica M6, and still shoot films, still have my darkroom. And so it's been my passion for many, many years. The just being able to capture those images, and I actually shoot with a 35 millimeter lens, because I've found that that's the way I see, and so therefore I see the photograph, I put the camera to my eye, and it's all lined up. A wonderful job that I did that was in Italy, between Siena and Florence, for 5 days. And we were there to photograph community. That was the assignment, community. And I shot it all in film because they wanted archival prints and everything else. And, for someone who loves Street Moments, it was the best job ever, because that's all I did. I will roam the streets photographing life. And this is my Alfred Hitchcock lookalike, which is Alfred Hitchcock was always in his films, so I figured I'd put him in my photograph.
Bruce, do you exclusively shoot with film?
My black and white is film. My color is digital. And if I convert a color image to black and white, I don't like it. I know that it was a color shot. I'm under the, if it's supposed to be black and white, I want to shoot it in black and white. So when I work with my M6, I can put color in there, but I don't, just because of the cost. I think in black and white. So it really makes me think in black and white, because I'm sitting there shooting. I can't get color out of it. I don't feel any loss for, to me, this would not have worked if I had shot it in color. A little bit harder, a little bit more involved, but I think the value is great. Somebody who had an ad for a golf course, they wanted this photograph, and I must have spent 6 months looking for this guy here in New York. I never found him. I needed a release, because I wanted him like going down at the 18th green, the green at 18.
You ever find them?
Never found him. Every time I'd go someplace, because he's a contractor for a contractor for a contractor, and oh yeah, I know him. I'd go here. Oh yeah, I know. It kept going on and on. I just gave up. So my moments are those moments that most people walk by, and I'll have a show of my work, and people say, this is very familiar, and I says, it is familiar, but I've captured it, and that's why it's on the wall. And most people just walk by. And to me, when it works, it's just so funny. I mean, what people do and captured in the right moment at the right time. To me, why is this guy standing in the middle of the street? And she was on her headphones, so she wasn't paying attention. But why did she have to go around him? It just doesn't make any sense. And the street's very wide. And when I went to RIT in Rochester, and one of the teachers was really big on shooting from your hip. Well, that's the way to capture these moments. And I always shoot with my camera up, except I walked by these two ladies, and she was breastfeeding the child, and for some reason it intimidated the heck out of me. And I walked by them, and I stopped, and I said, the heck with this, I got to get this photograph. And I pre-focused, and I walked back, and I actually shot from the hip. And I was just amazed that everything was lined up and in focus. And late at night, why does I was doing a party, and I walk out at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm walking down the street, and this guy's here shoveling on Park Avenue. And I take a picture. Now, the M6 makes no noise. I take one picture, and by the time I advanced the film, he had stopped shoveling, and he turned around and looked at me, trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. And it puzzled me today, how in the world, with all the noise he was making with the shovel, that he even heard that I was walking behind him. And I just like watching, standing and watching. This is in Vienna, which is a wonderful place for street moments. And this is my brother, who is on the Zoom. My older brother is on the Zoom with us tonight here. He was actually in the car when we photographed this in Egypt. And I always look at this one, my room with a view, and just a wonderful time. And so one of the really big things that I love is portraits. And I just finished a phone call today. I've got 131 portraits to do next month. So it's going to be a lot of portraits. So luckily I've had a lot of practice. I feel that the portraits that if they really work, they really tell the story. And if you asked me about them, I could tell you just a little bit. A little boy in China, we gave him the basketball because he had nothing. And I'm hoping that, this is his living room. So, but also I think the portraits are really important because they let you look into them and make up your own stories, which I think is absolutely wonderful. This happened to be the mother of the child, and this happened to be her kitchen. And totally, she speaks Mandarin. I'm in the middle of southern China. I had no way except the camera was what did the conversation between the two of us. Gave a big smile. We said goodbye and we walked on. It was just fantastic to be able to capture her. Bangladesh in the middle of the street, nowhere. And they just opened themselves up, and it was absolutely wonderful. And she just loved having, you know, I guess she wanted me to buy whatever she was making there, but I don't do much on the eating on the street in some of the places I've been. Bhutan, an absolutely wonderful place for portraits, wonderful, you know, just if you know anything about Bhutan, the dress and everything else shows you the culture of the people just from the image. Lining up 7 kids in the middle of a village in Bangladesh. It can't speak Bengali, but it just happens, and it's just wonderful. I walked into this classroom in Bangladesh, and there must have been over 100 children in this with one teacher, and I only go into these places with permission from the teacher. You know, I acknowledge that I'm there, and they actually love it because it gives the kids a chance to say sometime in their life, hey, I ran into this photographer and we had this, you know, a little bit of a back and forth. We try to have fun during literally the 2-3 minutes that are there. It generates a really nice photograph. It gives them a moment in time, and it gives me a moment in time. This little girl, I don't know if she was too happy with me taking the picture, but you know, it was take the picture, thank you, and move on. And then in China, just again, I was there on a medical mission, and I just had to get out into the streets. And there are some countries, such as China, such as the West Bank, that you have, in Pakistan, you just have to be careful. You just have to be have your street smarts about you. But if you're courteous and are open to these people, and you have a good guide with you, the pictures and the portraits are there. This was the next photograph of the guys putting the cart with the rice. It was just as they were leaving. So the portraits just kind of continue. Back in Pakistan. This was part of I wanted to see if I could create a nonprofit to where this man has a cleft lip and he's 55 years old, and he just hasn't had the ability to have it fixed. And I wanted to see if I could bring the American doctors into Pakistan to get these people fixed, and it wasn't possible. Bringing the child back from the hospital, just amazing, because now the kid's cleft is fixed. And again, what happens around me was the thing that I really remember, because they were so happy to have their child back. Refugees in Jordan. And also, you know, as a photographer, not being political, not being, you know, confrontational and all that, but having to hear what's going on in the photograph that you're taking. This man was saying, I don't care, I'm sick, let myself die, but take care of my wife and my 2 children. And you're sitting here trying to take this picture, and all of a sudden I realize what is actually going on. That the story behind these it brings heavy tears to your eyes, and you have to, as a journalist, just keep photographing to tell the story, because the object of my job on this one was to tell the story of these people. Again, telling the story of the mother and the child, who was a freedom fighter in the West Bank, and she will never see him again. So there's a lot behind the photographs, and someday I will do a book with small photograph and lots of text, because the stories behind it are much more than the stories of the photograph. Cartier-Bresson photographed Picasso. I don't know if anybody ever remember that. And he's got his hands on the desk. Well, he actually doesn't have his hands on the desk, but he's got bread on the desk that look like hands. And Picasso's sitting there with his hands hidden. And this always reminded me of that. So I just want to go through, because I want to get to some of the projects that I've been working on recently, and also I also believe you don't have to go to the other side of the world to do portraits. You can do them in your backyard. My nephew was a Marine, and I took him all over New York in all the different places as a Marine. Try to convince an Amtrak guy to let you take his picture on the train. Well, absolutely nobody. I think it was during COVID, absolutely nobody on the train. So one of the things I love to do are projects. And as we all know as photographers, it's rather tough to come up with the project. But I keep trying. And during 9/11, I put a flag, after 9/11, I put a flag that my daughter had made up on the wall. And for about 2 years, I photographed people in front of that flag. And it was rather emotional. I shot 1 frame of film per person that I put in front of the flag. And then,
do you always make sure to try to send prints to some of these people that you can?
As much as possible. And one time, which is the Nurses of Lenox Hill, my Heroes series, from the fact that it's very hard to get prints back to somebody in Pakistan, I've actually tried to mail people in India or other places, and I ended up getting the packages back. So April of 2020, I started my Heroes series, and where I went up to Lenox Hill to the clapping, at 7 o'clock clapping. And the next day that I was there, I came back the next day, and I had made up 30, 40 prints of what I had shot the day before. So in that same, what you're saying, Frank, and I gave the prints to the nurses. They said, do you know any of these people? You know, it was all chaotic and everything. Do you know any of these people? Oh yeah. And the smiles on their faces were just amazing. Over 14 weeks, I gave them 2,500 images, and they wallpapered the inside of the hospital with the pictures. And then, and as more and more pictures came in, I allowed the nurses to take pictures from the wall. And I also, because of good old Facebook, I put up a gallery on Facebook, and they could download the pictures from the gallery. And so this is the book that I created. The Nurses Union engaged me after 2 weeks of me just doing it myself. They engaged me to continue to shoot. And then we did a book, a 118-page book, and they bought 1,500 copies from it. So in this series, I did a whole group of, you have to go to my website and you'll see the book. But what I'm showing tonight is what I really loved about it was being able to do the portraits. And during that time, and I know that a lot has been done on COVID. but I hope that from the photographs that I did, you can really see the stories, and I literally lived alongside these people on the outside. I couldn't get into the hospital, and it was hearing the stories and just getting the smiles on these people's faces from behind their masks was very, very rewarding. Her glasses are fogged because we were doing an interview with her, and she was telling us about the fact that her mother went into the hospital for I think she fell or something, and she never came out because she got COVID. And some days they would come out real happy. Other days they would come out relieved. Other days they didn't come out. Halfway, about 3 weeks into the project, all of a sudden I had half the amount of nurses were coming out, and I asked a couple of nurses, what's going on? Where are they? And they said it's getting better in the hospital, and they were sending the road crew, which is a group of nurses that came in from other states to help out Lenox Hill, and they were sending them home because there were fewer and fewer cases, luckily. So I put up a black backdrop, and I created a studio on the street. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had anybody to shoot. And I started pulling people out of the hospital and on the street, and policemen, firemen, everybody that I could get a hold of. I've ridden horses my whole life, and I've held on real tight when there's a lot of noise. These horses stood still with fire engines, cars going by, horns and clapping. It's just amazing that they didn't throw this guy off. And this is from Lenox Health, Greenwich Village, which is where the other part of the nurses were stationed down there. And then all the way through the project, life went on. All the different protests and all the different celebrations and dedications and everything else. So I shot all the way through. This was Mother's Day, but it was also Nurses Appreciation Day. So people came out and gave them flowers. So it actually helped because it gave me props to tell a better story. The amount of PPE these guys wore, and there were some nurses we just couldn't get out because they had so much PPE on that if they came out, it would have taken them an hour to put it all back on, and they'd have to throw away everything that they had taken off. So there were limitations, and I couldn't go into the hospital. And so this is literally 6 feet of wall out of the 2,500 images. So they just literally wallpapered the hospital walls with it, which was fantastic. So I sold 9 books to one of the nurses down at the Lenox Hill, and I said, "What are you buying these for? You know, you can get them from your union." And she says, "Well, I'm going to give them to the directors because they're not union and they're not getting a free book." And so about 3 weeks later, I got a call from a director at Lenox Health, Greenwich Village. And I went down and met with him, and he looked at me and he picked up my book, and I said, where I had a director come in and he said, "Where the hell did you get that book? I want to do one." So I ended up spending 2 to 3 months this summer creating Heroes Work Here. And it was a gift to the workers of Lenox Hill. And my job was to go into Lenox Health, excuse me, and photograph every single person, every shift I could find in the hospital, over 300 people. And it was an amazing feat and amazing job, because I met tremendous amount of people and learned a lot about him. I have some problems with one of my shoulders, and I had my MRIs with Lenox Hill, and I'm standing in the pediatric ward, and the guy walks up to me and goes, "Let me come over here and talk about your shoulder." And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to be photographing you." "Yeah, but we were in the other room looking at your MRIs." So I had a doctor's appointment while I was photographing.
Yeah, Bruce, were you nervous about being around in such a COVID environment for so long?
This was this spring, so it was pretty good, but also everybody was masked. The place was clean, and I had spent April 2020 on the streets with all the other nurses, and I didn't knock on wood, I didn't get it. Unfortunately, a few of my friends on here know I had a few other things: prostate cancer, lost my gallbladder, and kidney cancer. So thank God I didn't get COVID while I'm doing all this.
Yeah. So
I was very, very lucky, because the many people, as we all know, are not. And they were very careful in the hospital. You know, I'm standing away from these people. They do have masks on. To take them off, put it back on. You know, they're using more hand sanitizer and cleaning than anybody. But because the book is going to be around for quite a while, we didn't want everything to be masked up.
And people can buy the book from your site?
Yes. Yes. This is, they allowed me into the OR because they had just put an OR. Lenox Health is basically an emergency ward. And they're just turning it a little bit more hospital-like. My other...
Yeah, Bruce, just one question. The medical missions, give us a little bit of background on, you know, what those missions were like, and, you know, who sponsors them, and, you know, why you do that.
Okay, so in 2006, I was putting up a show in the town of Sherman, Connecticut that I had photographed for 14 years, and I was standing getting some printing done, and next to me was this lady who was getting a thing done about going to Cambodia on a medical mission. And I looked at her and I said, "I got to do that." And she said, gave me a date, and we went off to Cambodia. And most of them don't pay you to go on it. So I do a lot of fundraising, and I use a lot of frequent flyer miles, and I followed 9 dentists to Cambodia, and I spend 8 days, and nobody cares that I'm standing there. They all know that I'm there. They all know I'm going to be photographing, but they don't give me any. I have no limitation. I can do anything I want, but the object is for me to come home and tell their story. Sometimes, some days are successful, other days are very difficult. But when I come home, my biggest challenge is to get them to put the work on the websites to promote, so we can raise money. I did get one doctor paid for a trip to go to China, which was a great trip. I did go to on one for refugees to Turkey, to Beirut, and to Jordan for refugees going into there. I'm trying to do another one because of the training and everything. I'm doing a water project in Pakistan where they have these big wells and they're pumping water through these dirt ditches to their fields. And I said to the guy, "You're pumping all this water. What happens if you don't have enough water?" He says, "We just put another pipe in the well." And I said, "What about putting a pipe from the well to the field?" And he says, "Oh, that's a good idea." And I said, if you did that, you would have enough water to flood another field, but you would also have enough water to put a 1-inch from the pipe to the woman's home that is carrying the water a half a mile 5 times a day from the end of your pipe. And he goes, "Well, we never do that." I said, "Why not?" Because it's not done. But the ladies, so I'm waiting to get back over there, and they actually are running the pipes. So, which is the amazing thing, is that I feel good about the fact that one of my suggestions in a country on the other side of the world, they actually did something that I suggested. And so we're trying to put a nonprofit together to try to, the farmers will put the pipes in, but I want to run that 1-inch pipe to the people's homes, because the pipe that they did run in to the well, from the well to the field, I said to them, because they showed me a video of this lady walking a half a mile with 5 gallons of water in her head. I said, "How far is her house from the pipe?" And he goes, "Oh, 300 feet. I go, "Put a pipe through her house." So it'll be interesting when I go back. If anybody wants to get involved in medical missions, there's a lot of stuff that you have to know, but it is so incredibly rewarding. If you got a 16-year-old that just can't get off of his cell phone, send him on a medical mission with me. I'll bring home a completely changed kid. It's just amazing, some of the young kids that go on these medical missions, how they start out and how they end up. It's just absolutely amazing.
Bruce, you got to finish up, so let's go.
Yep. So Cuba is another book. I've been down there 12 years. I have an absolute love for Cuba. So I printed 260-page, basically a vanity book, because I just had to see it. I had to see it on paper. And the best way to do that is to go to a press and print. So again, my just little PR here, my Camera Odysseys, and I take people all over the world. And I had to do my parting shots because there's always going to be someone with a sword stabbing me. And for photographers, about February, I was photographing on the street of 34th across from Macy's, and I got knocked over on my butt by somebody who didn't want me to photograph, and he knocked me down like someone hit me with a car. I really got nailed. And so they're basically blindsiding you. And I wanted to show you my Cambodia minivan. The mother, they're waiting for mom to come to get on the back. So
Bruce, everyone can get and see the books that you're selling on your website.
Yeah, brucebyers.com and Camera Odysseys. And I mean, thank you, Frank. I mean, I've done this a few times with you, and it's just absolutely amazing. And
we're always thrilled to have you. And we're always thrilled to have you. And when new books and new bodies of works are coming, we want you on. You're
Yep.
doing, important work. And, I didn't know, but, we'll have to say a prayer for you with your health issues that they're eradicated and, you're all good.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know after December. I got back surgery in December.
You're a science project, Bruce.
Yeah. Yeah. Buy a light camera. Don't carry the heavy cameras anymore.
So what other places can you go on your camera odysseys?
Well, Cuba in January, Nepal and Bhutan in May. And I had talked to someone today that wants to do Italy. And I also have a friend who just moved back to Luxembourg. And we're going to go to Luxembourg and have a photo walk workshop on the streets of Luxembourg.
Great
So,
little town, Vianden. There's a great small town in Luxembourg called Vianden.
I will visit it for sure.
So of course, everybody in the chat room is loving the work, Bruce. We thank everybody for stopping in. We've got a quick turnaround for projections. We've got a great show next week. And I'll only give you a little bit of a tantalizer that Joe McNally is going to be hosting. Three wonderful photographers and a great photo editor. Everyone will get all this information is up on the projection.live website. So I thank everyone for coming in and being with us, and we'll see you next time.